Hello everyone, my name is Mackenzie Kochman. I'm a EMT at FM Ambulance as well as a medic in the Guard. So, I want you to think of someone that you may know that has a physical ailment or chronic illness. Maybe they have a bad hip or a broken bone or just can't easily get around as well as they used to. Or maybe they have something more life-threatening, such as cancer. Now, I want you to imagine if someone just told them to just get over it. Sleep it off. It'll be okay. You're just acting this way for attention. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but you surely would jump to explain to the legitimacy of the ailment because you understand how serious these issues are. Now, why can't we do the same for mental illness? There are people in your life you may not even know have a mental illness. And because of the stigma surrounding it, they feel like they can't talk about it or reach out to other people. The stigma for mental illness is so vast that people are afraid to talk about it for the fear of being shunned or just for the fact that people simply won't care. Those in your life can need your help more than you may know. Today, we're going to discuss mental illness and the stigma around it. Mental illness is much more than a stereotype that we see in media. It can affect anyone, myself included. It is totally consuming and is physically taxing on the individual dealing with it. I hope that after this speech, it may broaden your knowledge about people suffering from a mental illness and change the way you think about them. And hopefully, you can gain some skills to help them out in the future. The stigma of mental illness is somewhat taboo. People really don't talk about it, and sometimes when they do, it becomes more of a negative connotation. But mental illness is very much real and can become very serious. So you may ask, what is mental illness? During his TED Talk in Charlottesville, Dr. Jeffrey Lipperman, professor and chair of mental psychiatric studies at Columbia University, past president of the American Psychiatric Association, states that 20% of the world's population will experience mental illness at some point of his or her life. Mental illness is described as a condition that affects the person's mood, feeling, and thinking, according to the National Lines of Mental Illness. It derives from a whole bunch of different factors such as genetics, lifestyle, and even the environment. Mental health conditions such as anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder are all consuming and taxing, as mentioned before. Someone who has an illness or disorder, or multiple, typically find themselves physically and mentally drained, putting strain on the easiest tasks, such as just simply getting up in the morning. Both professional and social lives suffer from these disorders, making them all-consuming and feel like another demon they have to battle. Mental Health America describes the symptoms of mental illness, including prolonged sadness, growing inability to cope with daily problems and activities, confused thinking, hallucination, excessive worries and fears, and even suicidal thoughts. The article also listed ways to cope. People who have mental health disorders usually deal with them their entire lives, typically starting after their original onset, which sometimes doesn't even happen until the teens or adulthood. To manage it, networking, counseling, and in many cases, medication is the only way to help. Only this becomes difficult with the stigma surrounding mental illness. So, what is a stigma? An excerpt from the Journal of Mental Health Counselings defines stigma as a mark of disgrace. The stigma surrounding mental illness is so intense that people refrain from seeking help, which only heightens their suffering. The article Understanding the Impacts of the Stigma on People with Mental Illness from the official Journal of American Psychiatric Association points out that stigma not only comes from the general public, but it comes from what they call self-stigma. The stereotypes and the discrimination show that people with mental health issues lead to anger and often avoidance to both their own issues as well as people around them. So, a personal example, I grew up with anxiety and depression. So for years, I attempted to seek help from school administration, friends, family, only to be shot down in return and feel even worse than I did before I asked for help. My mom grew up with really bad anxiety and depression, so all of those factors didn't help in my case. And so when seeking help through the school system, they pretty much told me that I needed to get myself together because I was upsetting other students. Crazy, I know. And they also told me that I needed to figure out what to do to get better so I won't bother other people or cause other strife. With mental illness, it's kind of hard to do. A lot of times you don't know where it derives from or what's causing it. So obviously this greatly discouraged me, and I found trouble trying to reach out again. But with a lot of persistence from my friends and some of my family, I decided to give it another shot. So in the end, through the school system, I got the same reaction. No one could understand or know why I was feeling the way I was feeling. I felt so alone and very uncomfortable that I decided to take matters into my own hands, and I'm not proud of it, but I cut myself and I even attempted suicide my junior year of high school. Obviously, I'm okay now, but mental health, it's super important, and like I said, can become very dangerous. And I was hospitalized, I went to Prairie, and I felt so uncomfortable in the whole system that I just lied to get out of there and be able to go back home and try and feel normal again. I tried different medications, I felt numb, I just didn't feel anything and I hated it. Luckily for me, I had a strong group of friends that were super supportive, and I decided to join the Army, even though I probably shouldn't have, but in my case, it was a distraction and it got me to figure myself out and kind of dig down deep. When I was at basic training, I had no cell phone, I had nothing, just me, myself, and I trying to get through training, and that helped me a lot. And even today, I still struggle, but I have learned ways to cope with it. So my case is just one of many cases of mental illness out there. The stigma we have shows blame towards the victim instead of compassion and resources to get help. The basic idea of mental illness has made it to our everyday speaking. Examples being calling the weather bipolar when it starts off being rainy, and then decides to snow, and then it's super sunny by the end of the day. We say we are depressed when nothing doesn't go our way, or we occasionally joke around saying, "Oh my gosh, that test was horrible. I think I'm going to kill myself." And we don't really think about these in our everyday speech, but it happens. And this is just proof that this is just proof about the negative connotation of how we think about mental health. The context in which we speak about these things have a major effect on people who actually suffer from mental illness and feel this way. Using language this way emphasizes how we view mental illness negatively, and we don't blame people with cancer for getting sick because it is legitimate. So why don't we view mental illness the same way? The solution is to become more educated on the subject and how we can help. We need to ease the stigma so people become more comfortable in seeking help. I've taken a couple of psychology classes, and an important thing to remember is to separate mental illness from the person. So for example, instead of saying a schizophrenic, we would say a person with schizophrenia. By separating the mental illness from the person really makes it more about what they're dealing with rather than who they are as a person. So mental illness is a very important aspect of our lives that often get overlooked. Spread the word and show what you can improve in your own life as well as the lives of others. We can help relinquish the stigma surrounding it, clearing up the misconceptions about mental health that are prevalent in our society and the world. Thank you for listening to my speech. I hope you guys can help your friends in the future. Thank you.